Trump's 900% increase, President Trump's foreign licensing business, where developers pay to use the Trump name on buildings and golf courses overseas, has exploded since Trump returned to the White House. And a new Forbes investigation has gone through the numbers, finding Trump made $61 million in 2025. That's according to a financial disclosure report that they went through that was just released. Now that is up about 30% from 2024 and 900% from 2023. Before Trump was back in office. And obviously, those are just the licensing deals. It's an infinitesimal sliver of Trump's business. The findings mark a dramatic reversal from Trump's first term when he publicly pledged not to pursue new foreign business deals while he served as president.
I have no deals, I have no loans, and I have no dealings. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict.
And if there was any doubt, here's Trump's lawyer back in 2017.
No new foreign deals will be made whatsoever during the duration of President Trump's presidency. New domestic deals will be allowed, but they will go through a vigorous vetting process.
Well, it's a whole new world now. Dan Alexander is senior editor at Forbes. He's out front. So, Dan, can you walk us through, obviously, it's a complete and total about face here from now versus then, but where is this money coming from?
Most of it is coming from the Middle East. So of the $61 million, $23 million came from the United Arab Emirates, $9 million from Saudi Arabia, $5 million from Qatar. India has also become an important country to the Trump organization. They had some business there before. They have new partners now. And then there are some other countries, Vietnam, $5 million, Romania, $5 million. So it's really starting to spread all over the world, but the principal base is the Middle East.
And you actually connect some of what you're seeing here, Dan, with the president's current overseas business expansion to something that Donald Trump Jr. said back in 2018. I'll play his clip.
It's sort of a shame because we put on these impositions on ourselves, but essentially got no credit for actually doing that and for doing the right thing.
You know, it's interesting there. There's a lot of things you could take away from that, but maybe one of them is the admission that doing the right thing would be to not do the deals. But he said they didn't get credit for that. So I guess, is that why we're here now?
It sure looks that way. I mean, the Trump family seems to have come away with regret about the first term. Not regret that they faced all this scrutiny or did so much business, but regret that they didn't do even more business, that they didn't take full advantage of what they could have. And what we're seeing now, that enormous growth, is because they've decided another course for the second term. And you see tons of more money pouring in.
So the White House Deputy Press Secretary this time around, Anna Kelly, told you that there are no conflicts of interest. But you have found, you say that there are.
Well, look, there are a lot of different examples that you can look at, but I think maybe the clearest way to see this is to look at the first major trip that Donald Trump took overseas in his second term. He didn't go to a traditional U.S. ally like Great Britain. He flew first to Saudi Arabia, and then he flew to Qatar, and then he flew to the United Arab Emirates. In each of those places, he met with government leaders, but he also met with people who touch the very business deals that we're talking about right now. And so if you look at that, it's hard to say, that there's no connection here or that there's nothing to worry about, even if Donald Trump himself hadn't made clear in his first term that there were some concerns about foreign entanglements.
All right, Dan Alexander, as always, incredible reporting and so important to get into this detail. Thank you. And I do want to note we've reached out to the Trump Organization. They have not responded to our inquiry. The New York Times investigation showing preparations for full-scale construction have begun on a controversial luxury resort linked to Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. The billion-dollar project has for months been the focus of massive protests across Albania. Just weeks of nonstop protesting. All because the resort would transform Albania's prized and pristine coastline. Some of that effect already seen here in before and after pictures. Out front now is Riley Mellon of the New York Times. One of the reporters leading this investigation who got these images is going to explain what they mean. So, Riley, this has obviously been protests going on for weeks, and the Albanian government and their development partners said that they were not going to start construction until an environmental impact assessment was completed. So what do your images show?
That's right, Aaron. So our images show that while full-scale construction hasn't exactly started yet, there has been some preparatory work at the site. We're talking here about a couple specific things. For one, land clearance. So these images show that about 20 acres of land were cleared in the northern part of this area, as well as a gravel track, kind of a primitive road, was upgraded and rebuilt. And then a bridge was also built over one of the small channels leading between the lagoon on one side to the Adriatic Sea on the other.
Oh, and obviously all of that is meaningful when you're talking about an environment like that. Ivanka Trump has obviously publicly advocated for the project, Riley, as you know. Here's part of what she said recently.
I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale. We were on a friend's boat and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it. We swam to the islands. We went on a hike, barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated. And it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential and transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care.
So she referred to it, Riley, as massive in scale. And I know you've had a chance to review preliminary planning documents for the development. So can you explain the scope of it?
Certainly. So there are actually two sites that we're talking about. Ivanka Trump was talking primarily about the Sazan Island site, which is off the coast of Albania a few miles. And there really hasn't been too much work, really any work, in fact, going on there so far. However, on the mainland, a few miles east, the satellite images that we reviewed showed that there had, in fact, been some preparatory development work there. The development docs that we reviewed show that, while these are pretty preliminary and things could obviously change, the plans call for pretty significant development of the Albanian coastline. We're talking about several miles worth of coast, at least, developed, along with some pretty high-end development sites and amenities there. We're talking water parks, casinos, multiple hotels, potentially yacht clubs and marinas and things like that. So like I said, while these may change, it does suggest a fairly large development.
It certainly does. When you say casinos, right? I mean, that obviously implies it is massive in scale. So the protests have been dubbed the Flamingo Revolution. In part, that caught on because of the flamingos that live on what is protected land, right? So when you talk about the part on the coastline and the gravel track and the acres that have already been cleared in preparation, how big of an effect has this already had on the environment?
Yeah, so the experts I spoke to said that given the kind of protected nature of the protected and sensitive nature of the environment in the area, really any development risks harming the habitat there. So this is home to flamingos. It's one of the last nesting sites in the region for loggerhead turtles, avocets, and other birds. Also find the area quite important for their nesting and development life cycles. The other thing that is important to mention, too, is that bridge that I mentioned a few moments ago. To build it, the Albanian government actually had to, or I should say, excuse me, the development company actually had to briefly dam up the channel that the bridge runs over. And the experts that I spoke to said this is really important because the lagoon relies on the inflow and outflow of water with the tides. And even if you dam that up, if you dam that flow of water up just for a few days, which appears to be the case here, you risk causing pretty significant damage to the lagoon itself. Now, I should say it's still early days, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the site. Yeah. But this is one of the risks that the environmentalists mentioned.
Yeah, and of course all the protests coming amidst the questions, right, as to why it is their company that would get the green light to this to begin with. Riley, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I do want to mention the development company told the New York Times in part the project remains in the planning and design phase, with our team continuing to refine scope, approach, and vision through a deliberate process that prioritizes environmental stewardship and showcases the country's natural beauty. That is their statement.